All right? Because we know that the heart of the problem is sin. That's the heart of the problem. Sin, original sin. Do you know what original sin is? It's not just the first sin, but it's the result of that first sin. All right? When our first parents fell, sin's affected every aspect of our being. It just has. Right? Our hearts, our minds, we don't think His thoughts after Him as we ought to all the time. Our bodies, we get sick, we die, sin. So original sin is not simply the first sin, but it's the effects of the sin, our entire being. Hearts, minds, bodies, corruption. You can read about that in Romans 3, 9 through 20. We're not going to take time to do that. But I do want you to see Ephesians chapter 4, verses 17 and 18. Now this I say and testify in the Lord, that you must no longer walk as the Gentiles do. Now he's talking to Christians. We have a renewed mind. We're thinking His thoughts after Him. We're living for Christ in the futility of their minds. See, that's the Gentiles. In the futility of their minds. They're thinking, that's futile thinking, their own thoughts. Not God's thoughts, not His way. They're not seeing it from His perspective. Maybe a little bit, that does get in, and that's what we want to hit on as Christians. But for the most part, it's what they think. Their minds are darkened. They're darkened in their understanding, alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that's in them due to the hardness of their heart. Here it is, guys. Know this as Christians, that we are created by God in His image. We live in His world, right? This is His world that we live in. We use His resources, His principles, His concepts. And no matter how much we try to deny that, deny His existence, rebel against Him, run from Him, we are dependent upon Him. Know that. All of you guys need to understand that and know that everybody's absolutely dependent upon Him. And the people must borrow. We're borrowing from the Christian worldview in order to make sense of anything. That's a big deal. These are big statements. This is where we need to be tough, right? This is what we want to get at when we talk to people. This is how people show that they know God. Check this out, man. Even the lawless people need laws. Do you know that? Even the lawless groups, organizations, they need God. They need, in order to make it work, in order to function, even the lawless need gods. How many of you heard of the Sons of Anarchy, right? Not just a show, but the actual biker gang. Sons of Anarchy. Anarchy is lawlessness, chaos, disorder, absence of authority, complete freedom, right? Do you ever read, if you haven't, you should read the rules regarding this biker gang, and you're going to see, it's highly structured rules, discipline, loyalty, devotion, all these things that you can't have apart from God, they bring in a twisted way, to be sure, but they bring it in nevertheless. You know what? Do you know the mafia? They have 10 commandments too. Did you ever hear the 10 commandments of the mafia? Yeah. Here's a criminal organization that says something even about their need for God. Rely on these rules to keep their things going. Now, it's in a twisted way, right? But I'm telling you, and here's the point, even these ones, the lawless ones, they still need to borrow aspects of the Christian worldview. The things that come from God, right? Like loyalty, like caring, like, yes, discipline, all these things. Because in their worldview, why would you need any of that? If I'm a criminal, if I'm breaking the laws, I don't need any of that. Yes, you do. So check out some of these commandments. And it's just kind of in a twisted way, it works. Check it out. Always being available for Cosa Nostra is a duty. Even if your wife's about to give birth. What's that relate to in terms of the commandments? You shall have no other gods before me. It doesn't matter if your wife's even giving birth. The organization comes first, right? So that's one of the commandments for them. See, another one. Don't look at wives of friends. Why would you think? What commandment would that hook up with? All right, maybe 7th. The 10th for sure. Don't covet. Don't covet your neighbor's wife. Why? Because if you do that, there's going to be jealousy and infighting, and things are going to fall apart from within. So even, check it, isn't that cool? Like, even these guys need to borrow to make sense of their worldview, even though it's a twisted worldview, right? How about this? When asked for information, the answer must be the truth. This is a lying word. You can lie to anybody else you want, right? You can, except to the family. When it comes to that, now you got to tell the truth. That's Christian. Where's truth come from? Understand? This is what I'm saying. Money cannot be appropriated. In other words, you can't steal money that belongs to others in your family or other families. Now, you can steal, you can extort, you can cheat, all you want, but you can't do it from the family. Right? So they have to have that. You have to have that structure. It's twisted, but they borrow from our worldview. Wives must be treated with respect. Now, if you're a made man, you can cheat on your wife all you want in the mafia. You could have your mistress, your girlfriend, whatever, but you have to maintain appearances. You can't. You have to treat her with respect. You can cheat on her, but you must be discreet. Right? You can have a girlfriend. Yeah, that's true. Okay, let's check out a scene. This is a scene from Goodfellas. There's no swearing in this. Maybe the word hell, but that's okay. Just want you to see this because it's twisted, man. This is it. Check it out. Examples. I'm telling you guys, every day we see this stuff. We run into it. What I want you to do is to be aware of this as Christians. Because this is a big deal when we're talking to unbelievers. We want to get to that place in their worldview to show them. And then they have to wrestle with this idea. You know, that I'm actually, this is, how do you make sense of that? So like you said, they can do whatever they want, but you're not going to get divorced. Right? So they have the 10 Commandments. One more, never talk or be seen with cops. Right? You know, he stays within the family. And again, in a very twisted way, when these commandments are broken, not only are these guys punished, that's true, but the organization and the structure can't be held together. What happens when they start talking to the cops? Right? They get busted. They get, you know, if they do hook up with another person's wife, that jealousy, that infighting, these things, they need that organization, they need that structure, they need that loyalty, they need that commitment. These are biblical virtues and concepts that they're borrowing from even to make sense of their twisted world. Capiche? Does that make sense? Do you get that? People do that all the time, right? Everybody does this, not just the gangs, even scientists. And I want you to check this out. This is a little more abstract, but it's the same kind of thing. Everybody does this, right? They rely on God and His worldview to make sense of their own, even though they don't trust in God, even though they don't believe in God. And that's what we want to get at. Luke's going to hammer in on that in his session. But even scientists, right? They take for granted certain things. So when they do their experiments, what do they take for granted? Yeah, I'm really building Luke up here. You better be good, son. No, he's going to be good. Scientists rely on certain things. Real basic things. Everything we take for granted as well. If you're a scientist, you do an experiment, you just rely on the laws of nature, that things are going to work the way they're supposed to work, right? The way they do work, the way they always have worked. That uniformity of nature, that's just taken for granted. And we even take that, we don't even think that would, of course, gravity works the way it works. It's always going to be that way. Of course, the earth rotates on its axis in a certain way. What? Yeah. Right? The tides come in. That's just, we take that for granted. And yet, here's the catch, and here's the thing, here's what you need to get, here's what you need to understand. Those scientists who don't believe in God, who don't believe that God created the world, right? Who don't believe that God sustains the world, upholds the world, they can't count on those laws being the same from one day to the next. I know it sounds abstract, it sounds silly because we know that, but that's the truth of the matter is that. If they're holding true to their worldview that says we are just here by a total accident, total explosion, things just fell into place, randomly, accidentally, then how can you, if that's just a random accident, how could you count on that being the same even the next day? I know it sounds silly because it's going to be, and we know that is, but if, apart from God, you really can't. But they do anyway. And it's our job to point it out that apart from God, it really can't. Get it? It's a little more abstract, but it's the same kind of thing as the mafia guys. They're relying and they're borrowing from our worldview. You're taking from what we believe to make sense of, and then you're saying you don't believe in God and trust in Him. And that's what we want people to wrestle with. One theologian put it this way. It's really good. His name was Cornelius Van Til. Was a great apologist. He put it this way. He was on a train one day, and he saw a little kid, just a little toddler, in his daddy's lap, sitting on his daddy's lap. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this little kid just reaches up and slaps his dad really hard in the face. Van Til looked at him and goes like this. He said, that kid couldn't slap his dad that way if he wasn't sitting in his lap. That's like we're like that with God. We can't slap him in his face unless we're sitting in his lap. Right? That's what's going on.